first and foremost, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate you having me.
Dude, I'm stoked, man. This has been, I don't know, at least maybe like a year in the works or something. Like we're both just happen to be assigned to the same base. So, yeah, I'm happy to have you here, man.
It's good to be here. And I remember like that first, I think when I PPS'd here 2 years ago now, that's when I think you first reached out. It was maybe a couple months into my assignment. You were like, hey, are you at Right Path?
Yeah.
And I hit you back with a yes. And it was funny because I always I marked it in Instagram as it's got like a little corner tag thing. So you follow up and remember who you were talking to.
That's awesome.
And it was in there and it kind of went dormant for a few months. And I don't remember who reached out to you. If I reached out to you or you reached out to me next. But basically just try to reinvigorate that conversation. So I'm really excited that we're finally doing this. It's an honor.
No, it's cool. And I've been following your social content for about 4 years since you were or even before when you were in Texas. And so I'm very passionate about podcasting. This whole podcast is about mentorship, leadership, resilience, and inspiration. But it's really cool because I'm blending two of my passions. I'm also very passionate about garage gyms. And that's how I discovered you, was through the garage gym community. And then that's why I wanted to do this podcast and this setup. So this is a church to me.
It's a good church. It's I can't remember. I've heard like the church before, like, hey, what are you doing? Going to church, going to the gym.
Yeah.
But absolutely, in a way, it has a lot of that same effect that going to church would be for. If you have a group of people that come work with you in your gym, you're getting that fellowship. You're also working to improve yourself, challenge where you're at. And really the intent is to not remain status quo, but actually to improve and advance beyond even your own expectations. So in a lot of ways, this is exactly like a church.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I tracked far and wide to make it here today. So with a yoke on my back, I said, I'm gonna do this podcast. What did I ask you? Yeah, so you talk about like this being like a church. So, you know, the same reason why people go to church, the same reason why people work out, and your job is very stressful. Again, it's one, at least to my knowledge, one of the most stressful in the military. But how important is having like something like this stress outlet that requires you to unlock from work because I mean, if you're squatting, you know, a certain amount of weight or deadlifting, whatever, like you can't be thinking about work. You got to focus on that. But how beneficial is that to someone's resilience and emotional health?
So I'd say it's super important, regardless of what your job is, because although mine might be physically or mentally or even emotionally at times a very difficult job to do, having the outlet where you can go and throw some weight around and having like that Zen thing. And for a lot of people, it actually might not be that fitness is their Zen moment. It might be that making clay pots on a wheel is your Zen moment, and that's great. But for me, mine just happens to line up that with a physically demanding job, my passion after 2013 really turned into fitness. And so for me, it marries up nicely. It's really important for me to have this because my wife will tell you if I'm not training, that I'm probably just the most impossible person to get along with. My body actually starts to hurt as a result of not training. We could talk about that now or later, but like I'm facing another med board now. I've faced previous med boards. I'm 2 inches shorter than when I joined the military. It's been a physically demanding job. So for me, training is what keeps me upright and keeps me moving, as well as it gives me that thing that I can do. And I normally train by myself, not that it's by choice, it's just the way it works out. But it's that opportunity for me to have that kind of meditation time where it's me out here, whether I'm silent, listening to music or watching podcasts, but just that me. And it allows me to disconnect from work, disassociate a little bit, while also doing something that also helps me at work from a physical sense.
No, and we've talked about the med board briefly before. I know you said that you're 2 inches shorter. I know all that's documented in records, but the most important thing is in your records, like, hey, doctor, I know it says I'm 2 inches shorter, but let's add another couple of zeros to how much I can deadlift or bench, right? So
absolutely,
that's the most important thing is like, what's it say about my numbers?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know,
actually, funny story on that. So when I was a staff sergeant in 2013, I faced my first, I think it was called the dog, Now it's called something else.
Yeah, DAWG or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Basically, it's like the can you continue serving? And I'm not bad. I'm just a bomb monkey. So if you're medical and you're listening to this, just bear with me. I don't know what your stuff is called. But basically, L5 to my S1 looked like a Salvador Dali painting. And the question came down, and I took this very personally because at the time I was like, no, I want to stay in the military. I'm only at the time 8 years, and I want to continue this. I want to go to retirement. So I took it incredibly personally, and I walked into the office that was handling my case, and I had just started strongman training, and I could do a 300-pound stone to like a 48-inch platform. And I was talking to the person, again, young, staff sergeant, motivated, not very bureaucratic, basically threatened them that if they medboard me, I will bring a 300-pound rock, put it on your desk, and I will leave it. I don't think that made it into the records.
That's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah.
And it's actually 2013 because I think the Air Force didn't have as many retention problems back then. So
well, in EOD they definitely did. So
okay.
Yeah. So there was a very long, well, not a retention issue, but a recruitment issue, which caused all sorts of issues from 2011 to 2019. But you're definitely right. It was a bold move, but at the time, probably wasn't thinking straight. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know if that made the records or not, but I did threaten 300-pound stone on your desk, and I will leave it. And that's not an empty threat. I can do that. I think I'm up to now. I can do like a 325 or something. So try to kick me out. I'll leave a rock on your desk.
Yeah.
Good luck getting it off.
Alan Thrall would be so proud.
He probably would be. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll ask him.
Hey, is this on? I just make sure. Yeah. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I tested it a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
I was playing with it just to make sure I knew what it was.
Hey, going back to your previous response, about the importance of lifting and just training, you mentioned about disconnecting, especially in your specific job in the military. How important is the skill of detachment, and you're also in a leadership position. So how do you teach people or advise people on practicing the skill of detachment? Because you have to, right?
So you absolutely do. So I have some opinions here. I just want to make sure I state up front that these are like Kurtis's opinions. These are things that I've done. So one, I've had multiple AFSs in the Air Force. I used to be an avionics technician. I worked 16s, 22s, MQ1s, and MQ9s. Awesome experience, but at the time it was a very different culture. So switching over to the EOD culture, we almost teach that from the beginning. Some things that we do to teach that is one, it's pretty rare that people wear their uniform to and from work. And I'd like to I'm not saying that that's what everybody should do, but for me, I find that that's actually a super helpful thing because for me, it's almost like the period at the end of a sentence. So when I finish work, I take my uniform off, I put it in my closet at work or in my locker or wherever I'm storing it, and I'm done. At that point, I'm sort of going from who I am in the military to Kurtis, going back to Kurtis. I can stop somewhere on the way home and I'm just a normal Joe. And we do that as a culture, like almost universally, EOD technicians don't wear their uniform to and from work. And that's not all of them. That's why it's almost universally. But that's the first thing right there is learning how to have that disconnect. Two, try to have a group of friends that are separate. And I'm not saying that you got to lead two separate lives or anything like that. They're obviously going to know who you are. But having people that, one, are at least outside of your culture as far as an AFS. Two, having someone that's just outside the military. Have some people that have zero military background and just bounce ideas off them. Because I don't know if other military members realize this or not, but a lot of the stuff we do is bonkers. Absolutely ridiculous. Try to explain to somebody like a change of command formation. Explain that to a civilian that has zero context as to what's going on, because you're explaining like basically, hey, we got new management coming in and they want to see everybody. If you look at the historical context of a change of command, it's wildly important because, it was developed during a time where social media wasn't a thing, like the internet wasn't a thing. So you got to see who's in charge of you.
Sometimes these are outside.
Yes. And sometimes, well, yeah. So like you're explaining like, yeah, so new management came in and we all stood in this block thing. Like I stood next to someone behind somebody and someone was behind me. And it was this massive gaggle. It was like 100 degrees outside. We practiced this for like 6 hours. just to make sure that we could stand there for 15 minutes.
And rigidly, right?
Rigidly,
Yes.
people are dropping out like flies, falling over, smoke in their face. And people that are not in the military are like, what are you doing? Someone who captures this really well from an influencer or content creator standpoint is there's a soldier's, his tag is like mandatory fun day. He breaks this stuff down perfectly. I can't even begin to match his wit and his humor. But have those friends that are not in the military, just so that you can get a bead on like, hey, what is normal? And that doesn't mean that what we do in the military is bad. I like to make sure I say that too, because a lot of what we do, customs and courtesies, has a lot of heraldry, and it goes beyond just Air Force heraldry. This is like stuff that we have done since the Roman Empire, which men think about at least once a day. So here's our moment to think about this. But this stuff has been going on for ages, and it's wildly important. But having those civilian friends to be able to disconnect, kind of disassociate a little bit, you will always be, whether you're in, out, retired, separated, kicked out, I don't care what you are, you will always be that military member, that person who raised the right hand and said, send me. But it's also really good to be able to break away from that and give your mind a little bit of a break, because we demand a lot out of our airmen. We demand a lot out of just anybody that's underneath you, because all the people that listen to this might not have airmen. They might have civilians that work for them, but we demand a lot out of those guys too. And so being able to disconnect, have those civilian friends. So to be clear, have those civilian friends. Don't wear your uniform to and from work, just as a piece of advice. And then 3, have something that is yours. So for me, that thing is this space right here is the gym. I like to tell my young guys, like, hey, you can pick like 4 things. Pick 4 things. Your family should always be the number 1. The Air Force is going to be one of those things. Sorry, but just get over it.
Yeah.
College might be your 3rd thing, and then for me, the gym is my 4th thing. And the reason I say that is because I've been guilty in the past of taking on too much.
Yeah.
And it almost starts to detract away from that very important role as a Air Force leader.
No, that's so true, right? Like the military does demand a lot of us, and it's more than just physical. It's emotionally and spiritually and mentally, and good and bad, right? And it could be a lot. I also love the fact he said just pick 4 things, because I've been guilty of that as well. Is I want to do all these things. It's like, hey, I can't do everything right now, but for the next 3 months, let me focus on. I'll take a college class, but then the next month, I want to go do this other thing. So, we're running our own marathon, and it's not a sprint. I also love the fact that you talked about find, civilian friends, but more than that, I think it's important. You can find military friends, but it's just important to find people that, and maybe people outside of your career field, because it's more about finding like your tribe, like your people with shared interests, right? So for me, for example, I did a play last year. And I've never done a play before, but I did a live, theater play, and it was awesome. I met 25 people that I never would have crossed paths with, most likely. None of them were military, so it was kind of cool just to have that perspective. But another thing is, like, you and I came together because we have a shared interest. Not only do we create social content, but we're very much into the garage gym scene. And I think before we started recording, we talked for maybe like 40 minutes about, bars and J-hooks and, 5/8 versus one inch.
It's all the nuanced details.
That's very political, though. We can't talk about, are you crunched for time, man?
No, I'm sorry. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I had one of my dudes. Not one of my airmen, but. Can we get just need dates. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I got called twice in a row, so I was starting to.
Yeah. Now, I know 2024 is an election year, and a lot of people are like, hey, we can't talk about politics. Like, to me, that's not the most controversial thing. The most controversies are talking 5/8 versus 1 inch, but.
Absolutely.
I'm joking.
Or is a 29mm power bar superior to a 28.5mm power bar?
Lines have been drawn in the
with
sand.
Mountain Dew roller.
Rigid formations are lining up on both sides.
Yep, they're falling over like flies. It's whoever has the most at the end that wins.
It's like Bloods and Crips in the 90s, right? Like,
yes. Oh, you're one of the 28.5 guys with 5/8. Oh, yes. You're beneath me.
East Coast, West Coast rap. All right. I did have to write this down because I researched you.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. That's a professional way of saying, hey, Kurt.
I stalked you.
I stalked you. Yeah. So I'm your LinkedIn. One person appeared in your LinkedIn or whatever. One person searched for you. It was me.
I've never paid the pro model, so I don't know who's actually searching me for.
Yeah, I just get like the ghosted out version. But if you get a ghosted out version for a notification this morning, it's me.
Yeah.
All right. So I did see that. So you have a Master of Science in Human Performance, Strength, and Conditioning. How important are strength training and conditioning, not only to one's physical health, but also their mental and emotional health? And a follow-up question to that is, do you have any stories of when your resilience was established from strength training and got you through a stressful time or situation?
I'm going to take the second part of the question first. So the second part of the question is talking about like a stressful time that got me through, using strength training.
Right.
So I'm gonna rewind. So we brought up 2013. So 2013 was when I got back from Afghanistan. I was out there serving with the 2nd Combat Engineer Battalion, the Marine Corps, out of Lejeune. And I was also serving with the 7th Rifles, British Brigade Operations Company, and some of the SAS guys from England, United Kingdom, whatever that whole island is called. When I got back, I was having debilitating back pain. I had basically been carrying a ruck, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I'm talking 100 pounds a year. And we were doing dismount missions that would either last hours or days. And when I got back, I was just in pain. I was trying to go to the clinic. I affectionately call the medical group the medical hobby shop. That is 100% because of my time in 2013, just trying to get help. And I finally... you actually mentioned Alan Thrall, and it's really funny that you bring that up because watching YouTube, I saw Alan Thrall, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He's a former pallbearer. He's out doing content now. I know fitness is important, but I never took it seriously.
And a prior Marine.
Yeah, and a prior Marine, yeah. And so I started kind of following his page, and then that ran into Never Sate, which is Brian Alsru's page, which he is just wildly inspirational. He's a former... I think he's an agency guy or something. He's very hush-hush about his past. But through those two gateways, as well as a really great physical therapist that I wish I remembered his name, big, strapping dude for physical therapists, like not your traditional, like, let me shove a needle in you. Not that I hate that. I actually like the dry needling. But he was like, yeah, the reason you hurt is because you're weak. And I'm editing what he said here. So he's like, basically, you're weak. You're a whiner. Shut up. Let's lift some weights. And so those three were kind of my trifecta that got me started actually doing strength training in a way that was productive in nature. Because before that, I would do what I think a lot of military people do when they go to the gym. So one, we teach running because it's the easiest thing to get 1,000 people to do at the same time. So I would go and I would run, I'd come back, I'd be sweaty, and I'd be like, all right, cool. So like that machine's open, I'll go do leg extensions. And then like that machine's open, I'll go do whatever, right? So you just basically wander around the gym doing the machines.
Or when it's PT on your own, everyone just goes, we'll go do bench press.
Yeah, bench press, yeah. I was actually, that's what I'm about to get to, or like the bench press, or like, well, I'm going to do decline bench press today because, I want to hit the lower pec versus the upper pec, and like trying to get all like bro science scientific. And I took it seriously, and I kind of simplified everything, and I was like, all right, cool, so simple, hard, and effective. Let's make training that's simple, hard, and effective, and that basically got me to where I was laying down in our training room multiple times a day during shift. I had like 5 ice packs I'd bring to work. And the only way I could get through work was to go upstairs, lay down in the training room, lay on those ice packs for like 15 minutes. And then I was like numb enough to continue. The only other way outside of that, so like when I would go to training events, because there's a lot of pride in this too, right? Like I'm a staff sergeant who is leading a section, supervising like 5 airmen at the time. And I'm not going to go on no profile because mama didn't raise no. That was my attitude. And so like I would go to training events, and the only way I could get through some of those training events, because I should have been on profile, like just straight up, like I was not walking right as I would.
And I don't think people, like now it's different. Sorry to cut, like there was a stigma back then.
Oh yes.
Right? Like hardcore.
I still am guilty of that stigma with myself. So like right now I'm actually at an AMRO process, potentially facing another med board. And I probably should be on profile, but I stepped up and took my I was coming up due at the end of the month for my fitness test earlier this week, actually. And I came up to our PTL the week before, and I was like, hey, I need a PT test. So we did my FSQ, and he's like, are you on profile? And in my head, I'm like, well, my elbow's screwed. My shoulder's still a little bit screwed. My back is absolutely screwed. Nah, I'm fine. And I ended up going out there and just muscling through and taking my PT. So not the right thing to do, but I'm guilty of this, and I'm willing to admit it. But this is kind of a blind side for me, is I refuse to be put on a physical imaging profile, because I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, he's one of those that's, became whatever grade, and like suddenly he's just not going to do PT anymore. Like, that is not my attitude. Well, anyways, I took my PT test in 17 minutes, start to finish, and got like a 93. So
was this the hammer run?
Yeah, I don't do that mile and a half crap.
The hand release push-ups.
No, I didn't do the hand release. Just did the traditional.
Okay, gotcha.
It's easy to max at my age. So yeah, that's super long answer with tons of segues there. But the original question was, help me through a time. And I would say that learning how to strength train really did help me through a time. And it brought me to where I'm at today, with the home gym scene, with my own physicality, with how I compete, with how I train people. It was a lot of motivations there, because like you mentioned, like, I'm pursuing my master's. I'm pretty much there. I don't actually have my master's yet. I'm like I'm like 2 classes away from being complete. But that was a huge motivator for me, because I had those people in my life that were like, hey, here's the hard truth. You're weak and you're weak-minded. Start strength training, and this is going to iron you out. And I was able to do that in a way that was constructive, and it brought me to where I'm at, where for 7 years I had zero back pain at all. And I'll tell you that in 2013, they were saying I needed to have like 3 of my vertebrae fused, and I refused. I was like, absolutely not. I don't remember how old I was. I'm not going to do math in public.
Yeah.
But I absolutely refused. I was like, no, you're not touching my back, because I know that a back surgery now means another back surgery in 12, 20 years or something. So yeah, that's that. Getting started just basically helped me through, got me upright, got my mind right, and kind of sharpened me for where I'm at today. The original part of that question was, how important is it for our
strength and conditioning towards resilience? Because a lot of people, or like you said, and he ties into your answer, like they have back pain and they want to get surgery, and it's just, to me, like, there's so many different things. Strength training can help with depression.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, there's something I feel like people are so depressed, and I feel like a lot of personal problems could be resolved just by doing a set of squats.
We have a victim culture that we live in these days. I'm not saying that everybody is a victim. I just want to make sure I say that clearly. I'm gonna say some things, and I'm not shooting at anybody, but we have a very victim-friendly culture where it's like, hey, do you want to be hurt? Like, go into medical and be like, oh, my back hurts. The first question they ask is like, oh, do you want to be on a profile? It's like, maybe that's not the right first question to ask. Yeah, so strength training can be that thing that helps you get better. The difference between, and again, it's not necessarily that my style of strength training is for everybody. It might be that you just enjoy carrying sandbags around, or you might just enjoy running. If running is your thing, that's great. Running is great. Like, there's a whole side of running that's incredibly beneficial, and it does help. And we're not just saying that it helps with things like, we'll bring up like PTSD, depression, those kind of mental health issues. It's not just saying it, it's in papers. Go on Medscape. Go on and look at the studies that actually correlate those two things. And it's wild, the level that it's correlated. And again, it doesn't have to be that your goal is to lift 1,000 pounds. That doesn't have to be that that's what your goal is. But the act of performing something that makes you better. In the Bible, it says that as iron sharpens iron, right? Iron sharpens iron is wild, because so many of us just want the Band-Aid, want the surgery to make the back pain go away. But that's not iron sharpening iron. That is flesh trying to sharpen iron, but really just getting cut as a result. You're just making something worse. You're not actually making yourself better. You have to do something that is going to improve where you're at. We have to disrupt homeostasis, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. You have to disrupt that homeostasis, cause some damage in some ways, like the physical sense is you actually cause damage to your muscles. And then get better as a result. Now, from the mental side, it might be recognize. So, like, one thing I know with me is that I tend to catastrophize. So, I diagnosed PTSD. I tend to catastrophize situations. If I'm getting into something that I don't want to get into, I'll be like, oh, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be worse. And it's all in my head. But knowing that I do that, it's interrupting that process and being, whether you're nice to yourself or mean to yourself like I am, for me, it's quit whining. You're catastrophizing this. You are making this worse than it really is. And just learning how to recognize that. That's disrupting that homeostasis, which the homeostasis, if you're not right in the head, is not being right in the head. So putting a stop to it, recognizing it, and then having processes there to make yourself better. So physical, mental, and the emotional side. So the emotional side so if it's the gym, it could be that this is your Zen area. This could be where you come and even if you just come out here and you walk in circles for a little bit, maybe not a home gym, but you just go to the gym and like just being at the gym without considering the work you do could be a part of that. Or it could be going to church, or it could be spending time in prayer, spending time in reflection, or journaling, or writing things down. All of those things, though, are in the gym because like I keep paper logs on everything that I do when I lift. That's part of that reflection. That's part of the emotional side of being in the gym. And to some that are listening to this, they might think like, well, isn't that a little bit wishy-washy? And I would argue that until you've actually done it, tried it, put the actual effort into seeing if it works, that you're not going to know. So try it, and I guarantee it'll probably end up working for you.
Well said. I'm going to have to look up how to spell homeostasis.
Homeostasis?
Yeah. But no, it's... I heard a pastor recently say, my pastor, and he had a quote, and he actually said it about a year ago, but it stuck with me, but what dominates our thoughts determines our direction. And on top of that, I attended the Air Force Association conference, or the Air and Space Force conference a couple weeks ago. And Chief Toberman and his wife were doing a panel. They were up on stage talking, and they were discussing how the importance, like the best relationship you should have is the one with yourself first. Because if you don't have a great relationship with yourself, how can you have a great relationship? Or the bar, you're setting a curve. You're not going to be able to build an outstanding relationship with like your loved ones. So, but to me, strength training helps with that, and I think it ties in what you were talking about.
If I could not counterpoint that, but add to that.
Yeah.
A relationship is one where both parties come into it with the intent of living happily and making each other better. So to have a positive relationship with yourself does not mean that you have to accept who you are, where you're at. You have to do that. But you don't have to accept that as forever. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that just because you maybe have emotional damage, physical damage, or mental damage of some sort, and I mean that like with the softest hands that I can have. I'm not good at words. But you can't just be like, so if I came into this and I'm like, I'm going to have a good relationship with myself. I have chronic PTSD. So that means I'm just going to have to live with chronic PTSD. That is actually a toxic relationship with yourself. So you have to have that relationship, but you got to take it a step farther. And you have to come into that relationship with the intent of improving it. Because if you come in with the intent of maintaining the status quo, unless you're Jesus, you just entered the world's worst relationship. Because we are all flawed and we all need to try to improve ourselves, regardless of the field or the arena.
No, that's awesome. Switching, like, whether it's with EOD, strength training, resilience, what are bad recommendations you hear in your profession and area of expertise?
As far as like from an EOD perspective?
Or maybe not so much EOD, but just whether it's strength training or like, bad recommendations for, because we see it, right? Whether it's on the internet or various social media or people, I call them the, like the barracks lawyers, right?
Yeah.
That type of thing.
I'm an expert because I read the title page in the foreword of a AFMAN or a DAFI or a DODI or something.
Or like these guys that sit on the couch and they're
keyboard cowboys.
They're like, you see the thing with women's soccer is.
Yeah. Let me put my 2 cents in. So first off, don't argue with children. My interpreter taught me that in Afghanistan. I shut people down very routinely. That's not fair. I will shut people down almost regardless of grade. I've learned how to do it appropriately for those that outrank me. But I don't argue with children, period. You can't argue with a child, and you can't save a drunk person. So, to God, you can't. You could edit that.
Now, I'm convinced that I always tell my son is 5, and I always tell my wife like we should negotiate with terrorists or whatever. And send like a group of 5-year-olds and we'll
yeah, they'll take over.
They'll take over.
Yep. Gosh. All right, so bad advice. There's tons of bad advice out there, but there's also a lot of good advice. It's funny. I go through stages. Let's see here. So when I first got into strength training, I was doing starting strength. And because I read the book and because that's what I was doing and it was working for me, at that time, I was like, well, if you don't do starting strength, you don't know what you're doing. All right. That is bad advice.
You totally did a Ripito voice, I felt.
Oh, I mean, I can lean on something if you want. I've been to his gym, by the way. Overrated. I don't mind hating on Rip a little bit. But, so lots of bad advice out there. Really, the good advice is going to be what helps you improve and what man, it's really hard to filter that when it comes to online because it goes beyond just credentialing. Like someone could be like, well, I'm a certified personal trainer. I know how to give this advice, or I'm working on my master's in exercise science. That means I know how to give good advice. I mean, but does it? So what I'd say is just one, educate yourself. We live in an age where there's so much educational material available to you. And I would say that you should prioritize people that know what they're doing from an educational standpoint, whether it's certifications or degrees, but don't just take it as gospel because a really good example of this is there is a physio over in England. His name is Adam Meekins, one of those two. Awesome physio, gives great advice on Instagram, does like breakdowns, and he also does some funny ones. And then we also have Squat University. And that's one that a lot of people are a lot more familiar with. So Squat University might put out content, and he's a physio. Like he maybe doesn't, I think he does patient care, but he is a physio, and so is Adam Meekins. But they actually offer opinions that are contrary to each other. And what people need to consider is that a lot of times these pieces of advice are made within context. A really good example of this is knees over toes. So like you're supposed to have knees over toes when you lunge, and then this is if you're a PTL and so when it comes to physical stuff, if some A1C PTL is like, well, you're not supposed to put your knees over your toes, he will catch my unedited response. And I don't care about your feelings because I know more than you. I've forgotten more about knees over toes than he remembers. So if you have long femurs, that might be the only way that you can get to depth in a way that promotes good balance. Because if you're up on your toes, you no longer have the midline of your body over your foot, blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to good advice, though, when you're trying to filter it, if it's just a bodybuilder like Sam Sulik and he's looking for the sit pump or whatever the heck he says, he's like the biggest thing right now. He's in Cincinnati. He might have some good advice, but I don't know, maybe not. He's young. Just take it with a grain of salt. And my biggest recommendation for people is to, if it's something that you want to do seriously, find a coach, and not a remote coach. Find an in-person coach. That's going to be your best first line. If you can't get an in-person coach, start taking videos of yourself and maybe send it to me. I don't care. If you send it to me over Instagram, I will break it down with angles and I'll give you some advice and you can take it or leave it. But if you need to hire a remote coach, just make sure that you have the video that goes along with the lifting to make sure it's good. As far as like career field advice, what I would tell people is that there are many, many roads that the military has to offer, whether it's in EOD or outside of EOD. I would tell people that they should not be taking 100% of their advice about their Air Force career from people that are inside of their career field, and that they should have mentors that are not in their career field, as well as some that are, but have some that aren't, to give you that outside advice, because the military already does some pretty silly stuff. I guarantee you that there's stuff inside of your respective career field where it's like, yeah, so that's weird. For one case in point, EOD chiefs serve in EOD billets. They are not CE superintendents. People don't know that. Like they're not technically eligible for that unless they step outside of the EOD career path. But 3E7s, 3E8s, and 3E9s, which is EM, EOD, and fire. I think I have those. No, that's right. Fire, EOD, and emergency managers don't serve the traditional CE route. So if you see an EOD guy sitting in a CE superintendent slot, that's weird. But that's interesting that's weird because almost every other career field, this was a big thing at NCOAs. They were like, well, an EOD chief isn't an EOD chief. They're a CE chief or an Air Force chief. And it's like, no, that's not how it works inside of my culture. And it's just interesting to get that outside perspective. So get perspective, get outside the box thinking, get out of your vacuum and stop trying to solve all your problems inside of your vacuum. That's my best advice I can give people. Use things like Project Arc. Use those innovative fellowships that are out there. They're all over the Air Force portal. Nobody's reading them. But those are the guys and girls that are solving the problems that we're going to have when we potentially, go to the next conflict. And if you're working in a vacuum, I promise you that you're going to fail. Don't work in that vacuum.
Even aside from the military, outside, a lot of that sound Air Force specific, but applies to everything, right? Like find people outside of your industry, outside of your typical peer group, right? Or even your common interests. It's good to have. I've had people tell me and I've started doing this over the past couple of years, is to have, when we think of mentors, it's always someone who's typically higher ranking or older than you. I've had mentors now where they're the same rank as me, the same age, or even younger than me.
So this guy probably doesn't realize that he is a mentor to me, but I have a staff sergeant who is mentoring me right now. And he is, I think he might even be a first career airman. I don't actually know, nor do I care. That dude is smart as hell. And for me to be able to recognize that and leverage that is actually helping me help my airmen get opportunities right now, because he is opening up my aperture as far as what's available out there. So don't be afraid to have those younglings. I am so, just soapbox real quick. If you're an old dude and you complain about the younger generation, you fucking suck. All right. Now, if they suck, try to mentor them and get to where you think they're at. But if you don't, you're the one that sucks. Also, this young generation is brilliant. And I mean that. I ran the EOD prelim course for 3 years, dealing with 18 to some old guys that came in later in their career, but really a bunch of 18-year-olds fresh out of high school. And was it incredibly frustrating at times? Yes. Did I want to strangle them a couple of times? Absolutely. But to be able to step back and be like, oh, they just solved what I thought would be this super difficult problem in this wildly creative way. That is just absolute genius. And get from behind yourself. Get over yourself. To not you, but the leaders that are out there that they're just well, the young generation sucks. They have no resilience. They have none of this. They have none of this. Stop identifying problems. Get off your ass and fix them. Because one, probably isn't as big of a problem as you think it is. And two, you're not meeting the airmen where they're at. You're not meeting the younger generation where they're at. And where they're at is hands and feet. Is that even, I don't even know what to say, but basically they are way beyond where we're at as far as leveraging new tech. And I'm not just talking about computers. I'm talking about processes, coding. It just goes way beyond. This young generation is absolutely brilliant, and we're losing them. We are 100% going to lose them because we are stuck in our old ways, and we just can't get out of our own way. And if we can't do this, we're gonna lose a whole bunch of airmen.
So I want to go back to some more general, personal, trials and tribulations. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? And do you have a favorite failure story?
So I have failed a ton. My attitude towards failure is fail now, not when it counts. The EOD mantra with failure is it's initial success or total failure. And that's true because it's either I'm working on a problem or if I screw up, I'm just suddenly not there to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
A favorite failure. So there's I don't know why. So it's not even that big of a failure. I was going through a divorce back, I don't know, whatever year it was. I got back from Afghanistan. I was in for adjustment disorder, PTSD at mental health. I was angry. I was going through a med board. I was angry. And I ran a IED operation as part of my training, normal training. And as I was sweeping up to an IED, there was an improvised rocket launcher. And I went over there and basically the processes that I did got me killed within 30 seconds of identifying that there's a rocket launcher right there. And I was just pissed. I just remember being overwhelmingly just pissed off. There was a lot of external factors, like my about to be ex-wife was right there watching. The guy that is the reason that we became exes was also standing right there watching. But that failure, I think, is probably one of my favorite because I have never thrown a piece of equipment that far. I got yelled at. I got smoked.
Was it less than a 300-pound stone?
It was significantly less than a 300-pound stone, but I threw a combat helmet. I don't even know how far it was. I probably remember it being farther. But it was just one of those moments where like that moment really allowed me to get out a lot of anger and aggression that I had at my situation. It wasn't a good situation too. Just let me say that leadership needs to be engaged in what's going on with their guys. That should have been a command directed move. There should have been somebody needed to move.
Is that the biggest lesson learned from that? Because I mean, obviously it was such a big thing at the time, but you kind of look back and like, you know what? In a weird way, I'm glad that happened because it's helped me become able to connect and use that to help
Absolutely.
others.
Now, I do have issues with connecting because I've had other failures too. I've had members commit suicide on my watch. And I know that according to mental health, that's not my fault. But you know what? As a leader, you're always going to think that that's your fault. But yeah, I mean, it taught me to get context in what the guys and girls that work under me are going through because that whole situation shouldn't have been a thing. Someone should have PCS'd. 2 people should have PCS'd.
Yeah, they should have moved. Right?
Somebody should have moved. But really, like, the whole thing was just bub kiss. It was just terrible. But yeah, probably, and it's not really even a failure on my part. I failed because I failed the IED operation. I died, in the fake world. But it drove this lesson that if you're not involved and you don't know what's going on with your people, you might smoke somebody who throws their combat helmet across the range because they just died on an IED operation. But if they had taken like 30 seconds to actually address the underlying issue, it was that my future ex-wife was basically sleeping with another guy within the flight while I was deployed, and I came back to like some other dude living at my house.
Yeah.
Who was in the military, in my unit. And in my opinion, leadership did nothing. So probably the biggest lesson learned there was, and again, just get involved and try to know. Now, other failures have also led to other issues where, like, sometimes I have a hard time getting involved. I was very involved with, I guess we'll talk about the suicide in my unit. So this gentleman, basically, I got him in 2013. Like, this was like a really important year for me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of stuff happened that caused a lot of changes. So he came to me as a brand new airman, fresh out of tech school. I came back as a, fresh from war, staff sergeant. So basically had this guy from day one. He kind of he has like the most entertaining what the hell moments. So like, airman, if you have a child when you report to your first duty station, even if it's not with someone that lives with you, you should probably tell me. So like our first sergeant, 6 months into his tour, is like, did you know he has a son? I was like, what? No, no, we've talked about family, and I specifically did not know that. So stuff like that. So basically knew this guy from 2013 until when he died in February of 2019. And it actually kind of, I'll say that from 2019 through 2021, I was almost completely isolated from everybody in my unit, even though I was in charge of that particular section. I had 13 people working for me, running probably one of the more difficult to run tech schools in the Air Force. And I was just, I insulated myself because I had to go pick this guy's daughter up from school.
Yeah.
The daughter I didn't know about when he first became my airman. I had to go pick her up from school because he was dead. And it just drove a stake in there where I didn't want to open myself up to that because I thank God I have the wife I have because she is the reason that I was able to kind of get through that time because
give your wife a shout out.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kristen, Simply DIY Home on Instagram.
Give her a shout out.
Yeah, she's also a big content creator / blogger for renovating homes. But she basically was just there and she understood. She had almost the same relationship. We're a tight knit community.
Yeah.
Right. So like she knew who he was. She had hung out with him. It was an absolutely awesome thing. But like that moment as well, I've always treated that as a failure. And I know that it's not healthy to do that. But the reality is that I'm never going to see that is not my failure because I should have recognized it. I should have tried to be more involved. And I know it's not healthy, but I just can't get past.
It's a guilt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But even going back to the whole like point of this conversation, that's why I think strength training is just kind of like a good escape, right, in some capacity, because it helps you again just sets you can have the you feel like the weight of the world on your shoulders, but then you realize, oh man, I do have 315 on my back. So hey, I want to transition to some lighter topics.
Absolutely.
Hey, was talking to Kristen. What if the thing that turned her on to you was the fact, like, man, Kurt really threw that helmet, 300 yards, man. Like, what if that was like secretly like her random checklist item? Like, I need a man that can shot put.
Yeah.
So, hey, can you show me the motion? Like, was it one of those things where you were doing like a disc, or was it like a shot put?
I think I was crying a little bit, so there's some tears for lubrication.
There's some patriotic droplets.
Yeah.
Patriotism droplets.
So just probably. I don't even remember. Wow.
I'm glad it went far though, because you imagine like when people get mad and they're trying to kick something and they miss the ball or whatever, and they
kick the ground, break their toe,
or if they would have like.
Isn't that the story of Jack Daniels? He got mad at the safe, so he kicked the safe and it killed him because he got gangrene and got infested. Yeah, that's like the Jack Daniels story, isn't it? Yeah,
that's good.
Thank God I'm still here. I didn't like.
So I'm going to transition to some miscellaneous questions. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just random questions with a fun twist on it, right? Kurt Locker, are you ready?
I'm ready.
When you think of a movie image that depicts leadership, who or what comes to mind? And it cannot be the movie The Hurt Locker.
Oh man, that's too bad.
That's too easy.
Because I would not say The Hurt Locker.
I
know. So a movie that has leadership, that projects that leadership. Oh man, that's actually a really hard question. There's a couple that come to mind right away. One is 300, Leonidas.
Oh yeah,
King Leonidas, absolutely. So think about that real quick. So as the king, the warrior king of the Spartans, and again, a lot of this is speculation, but I've read Stephen Pressfield's work on the Hot Gates. I've read a lot of history on this, and I mean, we'll talk about the Roman Empire later, just to think about the Roman Empire again later. But yeah, with that, this guy had 300 or more or less highly motivated, highly trained warriors that at a moment's notice dropped everything that they were doing and went to Thermopylae. Yeah, went to Thermopylae.
Yeah, close enough. I think you're right.
Thermopylae at the Hot Gates. And basically defended their lifestyle, defended their families, defended their culture. And they were just, I mean, the movie makes it like they're super, haroo. Like, if you don't get goosebumps during that, you're not, I don't know, I get goosebumps. Maybe I'm just easily influenced by movies, but like, I listen to that. Hey, Spartan, what is your profession? Oh, it's like, oh my gosh, like that. I got goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
Right? There's a couple others that come to mind too. Gosh, from a leadership perspective,
just anything.
This might be weird, but like, have you seen the movie Otto? It's on.
I haven't seen it yet. It's about Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
I have not watched.
So, the movie Otto. So it may be not a leadership from like a large organization standpoint. But this super cranky old, like probably on the spectrum dude who completely changes the life of this young family that moves into their neighborhood. And I don't know if that's leadership. No, it is leadership. Because he basically takes them where they're at. And like, you got a guy that can't back up a car to save his life. And he turns that whole, like, he's like this father of the family. He's like falling off the roof. Like, he sucks as like the stereotypical dude. And he takes that family and just turns them around and like makes all the difference in the world. And probably like that, like having that large impact on people that probably deserve it, but you don't realize they deserve it. And that's kind of the whole premise of the story there for a more recent movie example.
No, that's great. And it also just shows that, when we talk about leadership, it's not just military people, right? There's like civilian leaders and authors.
Wolf of Wall Street, absolutely. No,
yeah. Can you imagine the climate survey?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
We were doing lewds.
Yeah. All right, last two questions.
Don't do lewds.
Yeah. The last two questions. If there was a movie made about your life, what would the name of that movie be?
They already did.
What?
It's The Hurt Locker. Just kidding.
What would the movie be about? And which people from the garage gym community, which three people would you from the garage gym community would you cast in that movie?
From the garage gym community.
You know what? Let's do it like this. Like, let's say they were going to remake the Hurt Locker, and it's now going to be the Kurt Locker.
Yeah.
With you as the leading role.
Yep.
And we'll say you can pick 4 members. I know there was like 3 main characters in that movie, but
we'll go with 3. I can do 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And depending on your answer, if it's someone like, if you say like 2 people, but they're on like the same team or podcast, we'll count them as 1.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, but who from the garage gym community, who would you cast to be on your team in that movie with you?
So I think that honestly, what the movie would be about at this point is trying to make an impact on veteran lives after the military. Like literally just focusing, maybe like the first 30 seconds, it's like this action sequence of like, these guys went through some crap. But really after that, it's going to be me and probably my 2 closest friends in the garage gym community trying to meet people where they're at and try to make their lives better through strength. The 2 people that it's going to be is Chris Yarber. He's not necessarily a home gym owner, but he does sell the best lifting belts. They're all hand carved. He's a former Marine. He was in the 03 initial push into Fallujah. Absolutely awesome human being. Has really been through a lot, and is a huge influence in my life, like legitimately. And then the other person, there's two more, but the other person that's like the really close part here is Jason Campbell from Surplus Strength. And again, prior Army, Iraq, I think he was Iraq 03 or 203, something like that.
And I heard him, I think he was on the Garage Gym Experiment podcast.
He has been, yep.
Yeah, and I checked that out before. It was a great episode.
So, yeah, I'm very motivated to try to make a difference. And so I've had drunk conversations with Chris sitting on the at home gym con in French Lick, Indiana.
Yeah.
Just kind of talking about where we're at in life. And it wasn't forced, it wasn't deep, but like just talking about like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how actually are you doing? Actually caring. And then we have a group, a text group, and it's called Tres Leches. And we hit it up. It's almost every single day that there's something in that group where we're just trying to like reach out to each other. Like Fridays, it's like it's not uncommon to open up that group and it's like, hey, it's Thursday. You guys are ugly as hell, but I love you all. Hope you're okay where you're at.
That's awesome.
I keep on saying where you're at, but the other person that we're gonna rope in here is because every group needs a nerd who has a medical background, and that's going to be John Klipstein. Again, doesn't necessarily work in a home gym community, but owns UXO supplements. And the reason we need him is because John is brilliant. He cares super deeply about the veteran community. A lot of the stuff that UXO does benefits Mission 22, trying to get out, trying to give back to this community that we care about, the veteran community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I think that that's probably my 3 other dudes that are going to be there. Oh, he's prior Army. And he knows more about PubMed and Medscape studies than anybody when it comes to the actual efficacy of like, did you know that taking creatine is actually good for your mental health?
I didn't, but I'll take some. If they have creatine, I'll take some.
Yeah. So yeah, 5 grams a day, and it like has a positive impact. Do you want to know where that result comes from? Hit John up on a text, and you'll get a study. Like I swear he's got them saved in his brain somewhere, where he's just like, oh, this is the URL. Or he like plugs himself into his.
I might reach out to him for an episode. That's a good topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has another podcast too called Black Sheep Narrative. He's trying to get off the ground, but yeah, that's what it's going to be about. Is basically just making those saves, starting those tribes of veterans. And it doesn't have to be all veterans, but like I saw a chart today looking at veteran suicide. And veteran suicide for me is a huge deal because of some of the things I've been through with it. Like I've firsthand, like, you ever found a body before? Like I have. So very, very much so like an important thing to me. And I care very deeply about that. And I think that that's what I want the rest of my life to be, is either as my main hustle or my side hustle. It needs to be prioritizing that, meeting them where they're at, preaching the gospel of, hey, like strength and conditioning. Let's make you a little bit better physically, mentally, and emotionally, and improving lives, saving lives. And the best part about that is you establish those relationships, and it's kind of like that gift that grows.
100%.
Yeah, and that is an exponential growth. Like if I help 2 people and both of them help 2 people, That's not asking all that much. But now you've helped, what, like 16 people or whatever the math is on that?
No, that's great. Last question. If there's a giant billboard with your message on it for the world to see, where would you place that billboard, and what would your short message say?
Oh man, I'm not sure I can say that on this podcast, so I'll skip that answer. Gosh, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good one. So what I'm going to start with, like, what does the Kurt Locker billboard say? One, it's got a QR code on it, so that as you're driving down the road, texting, you can just aim it up at the billboard and go to my website. You probably can't do that; it's probably illegal to do, but I would do it anyways. It would probably, I don't know, some sort of message about. I honestly might just go with the iron. Like, put I don't know the actual Bible verse, but the as iron sharpens iron, so we sharpen each other. And the reason I would use that, one, is faith gets attention on billboards. It might be because someone that maybe doesn't have the maturity to just see it for what it is, sees it, and they're like, oh, you're trying to force your religion on me. But it gets their attention, and they see it, so it puts that bug in their ear. And then two, for people that see it and they know what it is, they're like, you know what, that's true. I actually didn't think about that today. So maybe as iron sharpens iron, we should be sharpening each other. Now, where would I put it? Man, that's a really tough question, because you want to put it somewhere where it's got, like a lot of throughput, a lot of visibility. I don't know. That's a really good question.
I have a recommendation.
What's a recommendation?
And I'll cheat since I'm the host, and I can make an exception for you. One is it'd be the first thing you see as people walk into Home Gym Con. And then the other one would be, I would have it up at the Arnold.
Those are good. Yeah. And then if it's up at the Arnold, up in the top, and it's got the QR code, they could totally just scan it.
Yeah.
In my head, I was like, man, like the 70 to 75 interchange just north of Dayton, that would be a good spot. It's got
I get all sorts of answers, right? Times Square, Vegas billboard, Google,
lost in the
like
you gotta be creative. Yeah,
hey,
those are good answers.
If people want to follow you on social media, where's the best place to find you?
So my Instagram is the gateway to all the stuff, just because that's where I'm at. One, I'm not on TikTok, so don't look at me on Chinese spyware software. You're not going to find me. Two, get on Instagram, the Kurt Locker. I'm the one with the KL in the logo. Kurt Locker's 2 words, but I think it's actually 1 on Instagram.
I'll link all this. So
yeah, someone, Kurt Russell apparently has a podcast called the Kurt Locker. So I sent him a DM telling him to get off of my name, but he hasn't replied yet. So
yeah.
And then there was also some fashionista guy named the Kurt Locker. So I'm not those two. But yeah, get on my Instagram.
I'll make
the website's in there. The website is really just a landing page to get you to my YouTube. So you can also look it up on YouTube. Just look up Kurt Locker, 1 word. It should come right up.
Good deal. Hey, one last thing is there's a tradition in the military. You mentioned the Roman Empire as we're wrapping up. I just want to, there's a big tradition in the military. You coin people someone for excellence. So I just want to give you my personal coin.
Thanks.
So that is a big thing in the military for those who are not familiar. But and the initials on that don't necessarily stand for Martin Foster.
Yeah, I actually saw that right away, and I was like, okay.
It's a pretty basic coin. Yeah, I've seen some fancy ones, but for me, it's all about, and it says for excellence, right?
Yes.
So the MF excellence.
Little quick sidebar before you wrap.
Yeah.
So I helped open up a brewery in 2015. I actually almost got out of the Air Force. Like, I was dazed.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, in an earlier conversation.
So I don't know how this happened, but when I check out with my debit card there, technology, it pulls in all of your information automatically, right? So like, you'll swipe your debit card, it'll know your phone number or whatever. My name, only at Crooked Handle, and I don't remember doing this. I probably did, but I don't remember it. Comes up as Kurtis M.F. Stadsvold, which I thought was pretty funny. That's because awesome. I could definitely see myself doing that if you can think of what MF would stand for. But yeah, I don't remember.
Martin Foster.
Yeah, Martin Foster. Kurtis Martin Foster Stadsvold.
Hey, cool. Hey, Kurt, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.